Okay, so you want to own a fighter jet. Good news, you can legally do it. Bad news, the price tag is the easy part. See, you imagine the moment. You roll back the hangar door, sunlight hits the canopy, and there it sits, a missile with a seat. You climb in. You're the kind of person who buys a fighter jet. But here's the twist nobody warns you about. Even the countries that buy the most advanced fighter on Earth don't fully own it. They paid $80, $90, $100 million per jet, and the United States still controls the software that makes it work. So before you wire the money, let's actually do the math. Not the fantasy math, the real math. How much to buy one, how much to keep it alive, and why the most expensive machine in human history might never really belong to anyone at all. Let's start at the top of the menu, because you've got taste. You want the F-35, the Lightning II, the crown jewel, and right away you hit your first decision, because there isn't one F-35, there are three. The F-35A takes off from a normal runway, and it's the cheapest of the bunch, at roughly $82 million per jet. Why the cheapest? Because it's the simplest, and they build the most of them. Then there's the F-35B. This is the show-off. It can take off in a short distance and land straight down, like a helicopter, using a giant lift fan built by Rolls-Royce buried behind the cockpit. All that engineering magic costs you. The B runs around $109 million. And the F-35C? That's the carrier version, with bigger wings and a reinforced spine for slamming onto a moving deck, about $102 million. And here's the part most people skip right over. Those prices don't even include the engine. The Pratt & Whitney engine adds another $20 million or so. So your real out-the-door price on a brand new F-35 sits north of $100 million. For one. Feeling rich yet? And here's the catch. You can't actually buy this one. Lockheed doesn't sell to private collectors, no matter your bank account. These go to governments, full stop. But hold on to that number, north of $100 million, because everything else is about to feel like a bargain. But wait, maybe you're more reasonable than that. Maybe you don't need a $100 million stealth jet. Maybe you just want something with wings, an afterburner, and a story to tell at dinner. Good news. The civilian market for retired military jets is very, very real. Want a Czech-built L-39 Albatross, the little trainer that half the world's air forces flew? An airworthy one runs you somewhere between $200,000 and $450,000. That's less than a nice house. You want something with a Cold War edge? A MiG-21, the most produced supersonic jet in history, can be had with a static museum piece going for around $50,000 and a flyable one costing a lot more. And yes, demilitarized warbirds like old F-5s exist on the market too, sliding from a few $100,000 into the millions. So here's the honest truth. Buying a fighter jet? That's not the hard part. Almost anyone with a strong bank account can buy one. The hard part is everything that comes next. Because here's where the dream meets the paperwork. You can't just buy a fighter jet, fuel it up, and go chase the sound barrier over your neighborhood. First, the jet has to be demilitarized, and the government means it. The weapon hardpoints get welded shut. The gun ports get sealed. The bomb racks come off. Anything that could actually fire or drop something? Gone, permanently, before you're allowed near it. Then comes registration. The FAA doesn't file your fighter next to a Cessna. It goes into a special category called experimental, often tagged for exhibition, meaning you can fly it for air shows, for fun, for personal joy, but not for business. And if your jet came from overseas? Welcome to ITAR, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations. Suddenly, the State Department has opinions about your weekend hobby. Think about that for a second. You bought it, you paid for it, it's parked in your hangar, and you still need Washington's blessing to keep it legal. Starting to see the pattern? And now we arrive at the trap, the part that quietly destroys fighter jet dreams. Buying the jet is a one-time pain. Feeding it is forever. Let's talk operating cost, and let's start cheap with your little L-39. Just to fly that thing costs you somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 every single hour. Fuel alone eats $400 to $800 an hour. An hour. Now climb back up the menu to the F-35 and hold on to your wallet. The U.S. military's own cost to fly an F-35 for 1 hour landed around $33,000 to $36,000 per hour. Let that sink in. A single 1-hour training flight costs more than a new car. Take it up for 10 hours this month, and you've spent more than $250,000 just on flying. And that's before the hangar, before the specialized mechanics, before the spare parts that only one company on Earth is allowed to sell you. Want to guess what one F-35 costs the Air Force to keep per jet per year? Around $7.5 million every year for one airplane that mostly sits still. Here's the comparison that hurts. A brand new luxury family home costs less than what the Air Force spends keeping a single F-35 alive for 1 year. Not buying it, just keeping it. The truth nobody puts on the brochure. A fighter jet doesn't have a price. It has a meter, and the meter never stops. The day you stop paying is the day it stops flying. So who actually pays for all this? Let's zoom out because the numbers stop being personal and start being national. The F-35 isn't just expensive. It is the single most expensive weapons program in human history. Add up the cost to buy the whole fleet, plus the cost to fly and maintain every jet across its entire life, all the way out to the year 2088, and you arrive at a number that barely sounds real. $2 trillion, with a T. Just the sustainment piece, the keeping them flying piece, jumped 44% in 5 years, from $1.1 trillion to over $1.5 trillion. And here's the cruel little joke buried in the spreadsheet. As that total climbed higher and higher, the watchdogs found the jets were actually flying less and were available less often. More money, less flying. Think about that math for your own jet for a second. The most advanced fighter ever built, and the bill goes up while it sits in the hangar. Does that sound like a machine you own, or a machine that owns you? Now here's the part that should genuinely stop you cold. Let's say you're not a billionaire collector. Let's say you're an entire country. You're Germany or Belgium or Canada, and you wrote a check for billions of dollars for a fleet of brand new F-35s. You'd think that makes them yours, right? You paid, you signed, they're parked on your soil, with your flag painted on the tail. Here's the uncomfortable truth. They are never fully yours. Every F-35 runs on a software and logistics brain. First a system called Alice, now its successor called Odin. And that brain talks home. Each jet's data, where it flew, what it saw, how its sensors performed, ultimately flows back to servers in the United States. Foreign operators can't just write their own mission software and load it up. They need American approval. Pull the jet away from that system, and its stealth, its targeting, its maintenance all start to degrade. You can own the metal, the engine, the wings, the seat, but the brain that turns it into the most dangerous airplane in the sky stays leashed to a building across an ocean. So ask yourself, if you can't fly it your way, can't update it without permission, can't even keep your flight data private, did you buy a fighter jet or a very expensive subscription with a jet attached? Now, before the comments explode, let's be precise, because this is where myth and fact get blurry. Is there a literal big red button in a Pentagon basement that shuts down every Allied F-35 with one click? No. That's the movie version, and it's not how this works. There is no proven magic kill switch. But the real story is almost more unsettling because it's quieter. The control isn't a single button, it's the entire ecosystem. The spare parts, the software updates, the mission data, the maintenance approvals. All of it flows through American hands. You don't need a kill switch when you control the bloodstream. That's why countries like Germany and Canada have openly worried out loud about what they called coercive leverage. The fear that the supplier could, in a crisis, simply slow the flow and ground a fleet without ever firing a shot. Now bring it back to you, in your hangar. Even your harmless little L-39 needs parts from somewhere, mechanics who know it, fuel only certain places will sell you. The fighter jet is never just the jet. It's the whole invisible tail of dependence dragging behind it. So let's add up the fantasy. Buying one? Doable. A retired jet from a few $100,000, a new F-35 north of $100 million. Demilitarizing, registering, satisfying ITAR? Doable, but slow, with Washington always in the room. Flying it? The silent assassin, $1,000 an hour at the bottom, tens of thousands at the top. And truly owning it? On the most advanced jets on Earth, that part might not be for sale at any price. Here's the real lesson inside this ridiculous dream. The fighter jet was never the asset. The asset is everything you need to keep it flying, and somebody else already owns that. You can buy the jet, you just can't buy your way out of the leash. You don't own a fighter jet. You rent the sky forever.